Okay, it says I'm live, so I guess I'm live. And we've already got two folks waiting, is what it says. There we go. Four concurrent viewers. Wow, that was fast. Hey, good morning, Corey. Good to see you here. Quick question for you, Corey. Did you get my second email follow up yesterday about the Part 107 and what commercial operations are? Just let me know over there in the in the chat window, or you can drop me a line back. I hope that the extra info was helpful for you. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to the channel, as always. My name is Rich Charpentier. I'm the channel host. And if you're here, you're already familiar with the channel, or you're popping by to get some information about drones. And yeah, mostly all things drones. And today we're talking about the fact that I've been working with the Mavic 2 Pro for 2 years now. It's pretty amazing. So I've got it sitting right over here to the right of me. And before we dive deeply into my thoughts and opinions on the Mavic 2 Pro, I wanted to follow up with everybody. So this weekend was kind of interesting and something of a bummer too. All right, Corey, let's see. Hey, CJ, how are you doing? Good morning. Okay, good deal, Corey. I just want to make sure that email made it to you and that might help you. And I totally understand the question. Corey was asking about any kind of prepackaged materials to help sell to realtors our services and why you want a Part 107 certified pilot. Because I've run into a fair number of realtors over the years who've been using people who were hobbyists, not commercial, and the FAA's got some guidance on that. So anyways, this weekend was kind of exciting and kind of depressing in the same way. We were flying with the Mavic 2 Pro this weekend, and as you can see up on screen, I've got my AZ drone sight, and you are looking at two ortho mosaics overlaid on each other. Over a year ago, I started a project with a company called CW Builders, Clark Whalen Builders. I've talked about this in one of my classes, and I've shown some of this throughout the months on channel. But so I started working with CW Builders in July of 2019. They weren't sure what they were looking for in a drone pilot, but one of their investors had requested some drone documentation. They got in touch with me. They had a hard time getting in touch with me through my website. Apparently, the contact email wasn't working at the time, but we still met up, so that was great. And mid-July, I started flying this location. And as you can see on screen, we have, let's go down to this ortho mosaic slider. So the bummer here, the thing that kind of made me a little sad and a little nostalgic, was the fact that this is the last big flight for the construction location. So they have finished everything up. They were a little behind schedule, but let's cut them some slack. We're in 2020, COVID, the crazy winter that we had here in Prescott. We had a fair amount of snow multiple times, some really rainy weather in November, December, and into January. Things were all over the place, and then the whole pandemic thing happens. And so, of course, different job sites are gonna slow down. I mean, there's no two ways about it. But we're finally at that wrap-up point. They've actually been done for a couple months, but there was just a couple of little fine touches they wanted to get done. And also with the pandemic, they've been having interesting ways of showing potential residents the properties. So in the end, they held off on that final flight. They wanted to make sure every last little thing was cleaned up. And I just noticed something over on the stream. Okay, that was just something weird. OBS just flashed something. I don't know what that was. So anyways, we've got that final flight, and it's a bummer. I've enjoyed doing this project so much. Yes, I have other projects, but this one was kind of the one where I really refined some of the deliverables that we were doing. I've done projects before, and I was just delivering things via Dropbox and PDF documents with information and instructions, and it never sat well with me. I wanted to give people a full presentation. So this is the project that really launched my drone construction project class over on Udemy as well, because, giving people an easy to use, easy to follow final deliverable package is huge. Plus, they can share it with other people who don't have to have a lot of technological skills. So there we are. This is the first major ortho flight that I did on the location. I believe this was like July 17th or July 19th. Came back for a follow-up because this is the flight where I prepared all of my other flight paths. So I set up the Litchi flight paths. I set up Map Pilot for documenting this orthomosaic. I set up Litchi for the still images, and we'll see a little of that after. And all of this was done with the Mavic 2 Pro. Do a sexy marketing video for them and tour the rooms. Absolutely. So they did have somebody in-house for some of the in-house stuff. So they have done some interiors of the models. Incredibly enough, well, incredibly or not, in 4 months' time, they're at 75% occupancy already. There are more people looking to move to Prescott than there are homes or apartments available for people. So this is still a booming market here, even in the face of all the challenges of 2020. So I'm not surprised, but when they said 75%, okay, I was a little surprised. So anyways, let's slide this slider on over and take a look. So by the way, no pavement or anything. Let's get the big reveal. So those yellow blotches down there, that's a cool little umbrella with a little swing chair in it. And then we've got our concrete slab here, but no, we don't. That's a completed unit in there. And there we go. No swimming pool, pretty amazing. And you see this fill pile here on the right-hand side of the slider. So we could have been doing volumetrics. They didn't need that. That was something I discussed with them. We keep sliding along, so we see all that finished pavement. You also notice all these weird gray blocks. What are those? Well, those are the sun-shaded areas for parking. It's still Arizona, and even though we don't get as hot as Phoenix, a week of 100-degree days with your car right out in the direct sun, your paint job's going to end up ending up looking like the paint job on my truck. All right, so let's continue sliding this on over. Once again, Mavic 2 Pro with Map Pilot did all of these images for this. I think it was 98 or 99 images. It's been very consistent throughout the process, so we haven't had any real deviation from the flight paths. I did manage to get yelled at on Saturday. I was flying over this little green area here, which is part of the property, and the neighbor right above was yelling out, "Why are you shooting in my window?" Which I wasn't, but I was flying over the client property. But so there was a neighbor who was concerned, so I shouted back up to him and said, "The camera's not facing you at all, and I'm here working on behalf of the construction company that built this." I turned back to my work, and he went back inside. The proximity to some of these private homes is they're super close. So when I was planning the flight paths, I was very careful to stay as far as I could from these private residences. So I've met some of the folks who live there, and I hadn't met some others, but mostly everyone was okay. I didn't really have any incidents. I did have a conversation with one gentleman last year who was curious about what I was doing in the neighborhood with the drone while the construction was, part way in. So, but overall, no real major negative interactions, and we didn't have any folks wandering around the site. We had actually coordinated with the leasing agent who was at the office, so we planned this a couple weeks in advance. One of the problems with this flight, and my heart goes out to the folks in California with all the fires right now, we're getting residual smoke from the fires, and we are a long way off from them. But we have had post-apocalyptic clouds or skies. There hasn't even been clouds. But I felt like it's wintertime in New England. The days are gray. When I show you an upcoming video, when you see the skies and they look a little blue, it's not blue, it's gray. So dealing with white balance and everything this weekend was not easy. And there was more smoke in the air than we realized, so it felt like I had a softer focus. All the settings were the same in the video, and it's a nice enough video, but I as I was watching, I was like, this is soft focus or something. But there is a lot of smoke in the air here, and we've actually been smelling it too. So it's been a challenging time. So I feel bad for everybody out in California. If you've evacuated your homes and you're having to live in this fire environment, we're only seeing some of it, and it's enough to really affect the flights that I've been doing. I've been pushing clients out. And when I'm done with this live stream, I'm going to be calling a client in Georgia to see if I can push out a flight for him up near Flagstaff, because it's not an appealing sky at all. So if you get some flexibility with your clients, we always have to let them know weather dependent. Okay, how about forest fire dependent? So, all right. So there's that. There's that whole ortho mosaic, and let's look up. I did 2 additional things, and I'm actually going to do the full versions. I'm not going to run it off of YouTube, but we did their final wrap-up progression video where we showed a little time-lapse stuff from July and then September. And once again, this was also flown with the Mavic 2 Pro. And by the way, if you can't tell as I'm talking about this, the Mavic has been an absolute workhorse for 2 years. I have very little to complain about except for the batteries. We'll talk about that, and I've talked about it previously. But before we do anything else, let's have a little fun. So let's pull this one on over, and it's already taken off. And let's rewind here. All right. So this is the CW Builders Winfield Ranch. September 12th is the last flight. As you can see, this is July 2019, so I didn't go crazy with the time lapsing because I don't want it to be disjointed for people, but there we go. Final structures. There's the neighboring homes. You might notice the soft focus as well. And there we go, back to July again. And what's really nice, we did do a nice fade in here. So this did take a little work. There's the swimming pool. It did take a little work to align the different dates and times to match them up as seamlessly as possible. You're probably never going to get it exactly perfect because there's always a little drift in the drones. But as you get more comfortable with video editing software, I think you're going to have you'll get used to doing this. So here we go again, July of 2019. There's the concrete foundation. And here we are today, down in the left-hand corner. We've got that now leasing sign. Look at the haze in the sky. So this is, and back in July again, so no haze in the sky for July. I just wanted to do one more fade in there, and there we go, the final buildings. But look at that haze. That is not blue skies. That is all smoke. That's 100% smoke there. And then we did that flight up in the middle. I had to adjust this path in November just a little bit because of one of their structures. So the flight path had to be moved over to the left ever so slightly. There's that new swimming pool again. So we were, number one, we're doing this to show the progress of the contractors, CW Builders. But number two, I also wanted to give them a nice final presentation so that people who are interested in working with them can see, you know, these guys are on time, on task, doing all the things that they needed to be doing, and they can share this around with potential clients as well. So it's not just for their own documentation. This could be used for advertising purposes for them very easily, and they can cut some of these scenes. Also, when we do all of our deliverables, while we're doing the deliverables on the website, thanks, Corey. I'm glad you like it. Are you noticing that softness in the focus? Is anyone else noticing it? It really literally was in part due to the smoke. We were working in the smoke. Once again, though, nothing like the folks in California. So there we go. We've got our little another little patio area. There is Jody and myself. Jody's doing the visual observer there. So this is where I had pulled the drone right into this corner. It was still over their property, and that's where I had gotten the interest of that neighbor who's asking me, what are you doing shooting my house? Camera wasn't pointed at you. We did some top downs when we started this out. The top downs aren't as impressive today. Litchi was used for these flights and for the still images, for the still image time lapse, and then Map Pilot was used for the ortho mosaic, Scott. So we started out and I showed a little ortho mosaic on the website that I've been building for them. So that was Map Pilot. The rest of this is Litchi. You can do this with Ground Station Pro as well. I did a new class on Ground Station Pro, and you can map out these waypoint paths as well. I've just encountered a little bit of jerkiness in Ground Station Pro sometimes, which is why I used Litchi for this one. I'm going to be retesting because the other week Ground Station Pro finally came out with a new update. It's been like over a year since Ground Station Pro did any updates. So they had a new update the other week, so I'm going to take a look into it. We also did just some for fun video here, just showing off the pool area, showing off that's the community area. They've got a workout room in here. So this is a pretty high-end development, really nice. We did meet a couple of the neighbors. Once again, the leasing company had let everyone know. They emailed out beforehand. When we were setting up, one nice lady came walking by, clearly doing her morning walk routine, and she said, oh, I read about that you guys were coming. So we always try to give a heads up before we're coming out to a location, especially in a place like this where, 75% occupancy. It's a Saturday. There's a lot of people around home. So we wanted to let them know the drone's not peeping in your windows, nothing weird like that. We don't do that. Um, and so it was great that notification went out. And it was great that we actually talked to a couple of residents who were curious about, what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it. So that was awesome. Now, the next one, I'm going to show you one more video here, and then we're going to talk all about that Mavic 2 Pro. And let's go ahead and rewind this. So this, number one, this is still photos from over time. Now, normally what I do is I actually have Revolution slider on WordPress, and I drop in last month and then this month, and we see the changes in evolution. This time I wanted to show things over 4 months. So I did July, I did August, because some major changes happened between July and August of last year. Then I did January, and then I did this week. Now, I decided to go ahead and use the Ken Burns effect because it gets really boring if it's just flip, next one, flip, next one, flip, next one. So I decided to liven things up a little bit on this one, and we'll take a look at the final results. So now these are still photos taken with the Mavic 2 Pro and using Litchi to mark out the waypoints where I'm going to be shooting from. The second thing you should note, these never ever perfectly align. So when I get back to the office and I'm offloading all of these, I have to take these into Photoshop and align them a little bit. So even though we have made our waypoints with Litchi and we've saved those waypoints, there can be a little drift. So, if there's wind going on, we can have a little drift. There's just a little drift in general. We're not 100% spot on with those GPS, the GPS links. So over time, you can have a little drift, and you have to realign these things. So that is a little time consuming. It's one of the more time consuming tasks in putting these together. I almost feel like the video is easier sometimes than getting those still alignments perfect. So let's continue, and there we go. So this one, I wanted to give kind of a panning over feel so that people could really see that final development. Here we go again, July of 2019, looking really nice. And then August of 2019, I'm having it kind of do a little zoom back in. And there we go, January of 2020. So they were really moving along very quickly until the spring hit. And we all know what happened this spring, and it's still going on, the pandemic. So there we go, August. So yeah, as you can see, just using a little Ken Burns. We didn't go over the top, but I wanted to make this a little more interesting for the viewers for their final wrap up. And there we go, there's the final. You can see there are vehicles already parked under these sunshade areas. So there was a fair number in there, actually. And there we go again, August of 2019 and January of 2020. So a lot of changes happened. There we are, September of 2020. So that was this past weekend. They've got their now leasing sign up there and everything. And I do find these interesting. So this little building back here and this little building up here where the mouse is, these actually have 3-bedroom units that we got to go into, and wow, were they neat. I was actually very impressed walking through them, but there's only a couple of them. So those are kind of, I guess, the high-end ones. So all the 1- and 2-bedroom ones are in the larger units. All right, let's go ahead and hit that again. Let me take a look over, just make sure I'm not missing any other conversations there. Okay, you guys are all with me. Excellent. So there we go again with January of 2020, and there's the September of 2020. So not bad for a Saturday morning at like 9:15, 9:30. And now you get some of those mountains in the distance. And below that is actually a hotel motel, so not other apartments. And here we go with the final version of that one wrapped up. So I didn't want to make the still photo thing go too long. So those were 2 minutes on the nose, and then the intro bumper for 5 seconds and the exit bumper for 5 seconds. So all of this stuff was shot with the Mavic 2 Pro, and this entire project was using the Mavic 2 Pro. I also have the original Mavic Pro. It's right behind the table over there. It does not get used as much as the Mavic 2, but I still do fly it, and I use it for a lot of my testing. So when the Mavic 2 Pro was announced, there was only one reason. I don't go out and buy the newest gear in the world the moment it hits. Usually I wait to see how other people are doing with the equipment, and I want to take a little time. But one of my biggest frustrations with the original Mavic Pro was the lack of variable aperture. I know we can get neutral density features. I know. I've been doing professional photography work since 2006. I like doing a lot of manual work, especially when we're doing portrait sessions for clients, weddings, portraits in the granite dells, unique photo shoots. My cameras are always on manual. So very used to that. When I do a lot of landscapes and ghost towns, you'll find me using manual and raw, or you will find me using aperture priority and raw. And when I first started flying the Mavic Pro and doing the granite dells and starting to do drone service work, the lack of aperture functionality that, we've got a fixed aperture really cuts you, it kills a big part of your toolkit for getting proper exposures. And it wasn't so much on the still images that the problem existed for me. It was when we were doing video, because, if you're doing 30 FPS, then you want your shutter speed at 1/60th of a second. If you were doing 60 FPS, then you want 120 frames per second. So that's problematic, and you could be sitting around in the field messing around with swapping this neutral density filter and that neutral density filter. Not appealing to me, but that's because of my own background. I saw a lot of people produce really great stuff with the Mavic Pro, and I made some pretty fun videos as I was starting out and getting used to the Mavic Pro, and doing a lot of color grading after, and recording in desyn like. All of these things factored into where I could still produce some really good results, but man, I just desperately wanted aperture control. So DJI, I bought that the Mavic Pro in 2017, and that's also when I got my Part 107. But so I got that Mavic Pro, started using it, really enjoying it, learning how to fly this smaller drone. I also own one of the original Phantoms, which we got back in 2014. So, before Part 107 or anything else. And, I had a GoPro strapped to that. So I had the little holder for the GoPro on that one. But the Mavic Pro was a massive upgrade. And also you might be saying to yourself, well, Rich, why didn't you get a Phantom 4 Pro or something else? And I'm totally on board with you. At some point I want to get a Phantom 4 Pro. But I was living full-time in an Airstream. So that's a big silver trailer. It's a big silver Twinkie. And I was in that for about a decade. So I traveled a lot more years ago, and was living out of that space, which is 25 foot long by 8 feet wide. You do the math, very small amount of space. With that in mind, a Phantom 4 Pro and its box and things is going to take up a lot more space than a Mavic is in an Airstream. So that's why I decided on the Mavic, when I was first starting up the business, was I would love to have the Phantom 4 Pro, but storage is an issue. So I figured I will start working with the Mavic Pro. And normally it takes me a couple of years to upgrade a lot of my equipment. I don't just do it immediately overnight. There's got to be a lot of justification. But when I heard that the Mavic 2 Pro had that variable aperture, I was sold. It was that easy. Even though I still have a perfectly good Mavic Pro. So that aperture priority came along, and I said, well, I'm making the purchase, so it was a really super easy decision. Now, when I'm talking about space here, let's see. Actually, I need to move a screen because I just want to make sure that you're all seeing this. So I don't work for Pelican Case. I love Pelican Case's equipment, so I'm not sponsored or anything. I got one of their Sky series when I got the Mavic 2 Pro, but the size of this is nice and compact. It actually can slide right under my couch in the Airstream, so it can be hidden and out of way. And this is also a convenient little case. Let's pop this open just so you can see. I didn't get the biggest one of these. because I know my normal flights. Whoop, there we go. So we have 2 spare batteries plus the battery on board with the Mavic 2 Pro. We've got the flight controller. I've got a couple of USB connectors for hooking up the flight controller. So normally for a lot of my sites, that one little case is all I need. When I'm doing some of these bigger construction projects, I do have a couple more Pelican cases with a few more batteries. And I also bring the regular Mavic 1 along with me just in case if any issues occur with the Mavic 2 and I've driven an hour to a location, I don't want to give up on getting the job done. So if I'm having some kind of issue with any drone that I have with me, I've always got a secondary drone. So there's where the Mavic comes in. Also, when I test new applications, it's 100% on the Mavic Pro, not on the Mavic 2. Because if I'm going to lose a drone or have something horrible happen to a drone, I'd rather it happen to the older piece of equipment. Also, just so you know, in my business, I am fully insured. I do have insurance on my drone hulls, and I do have liability insurance as well. So if you're getting into the drone business game and you're doing things for clients, make sure you're insured. Seriously, it's peace of mind. So once again, not working for any of the insurance companies or anything either, but it's a great idea to have yourself covered, okay? So the Mavic 2 Pro flight has been fantastic. I've never done any giant distance testing. I leave that to other channels because no customer has ever come to me and said to me, hey, Rich, we'd like you to be at your office, but flying our site 2 miles away. Can you do that? Well, that's not even a request. So why do I, in my case, for my business and the types of jobs I do, long distance testing is completely irrelevant to me. I am usually on the job site, usually within a couple hundred feet of the drone as well. Plus I've got my visual observer along with me, but I'm never doing these long distance flights. If you were working a larger job site, I can see some of that distance coming in, but one of the things is, if you find yourself a center point at that job site, most likely you're still going to have your visual coverage over all of it, unless it's multiple city blocks or something that you're covering. And then most likely you'll be wanting to bring something a little bigger than the Mavic 2 Pro. So like I said, we've never done any major distance testing or speed testing because the bulk of the work that we do for clients is around their properties, around their construction sites, around their new ranches. And so we haven't had the need for it's got to, how fast is it and how far can it go? I always stay away from that stuff. Now, the controller, let's pop a couple of these things out. One of the things that I have noticed in 2 years of use, the controller that's on my left here, is getting a little weird and it doesn't seem to be exactly centered. I got a notification this weekend to recheck the controller, so I did do that before we started our flights. Other than that, very little strange stuff has gone on. As you'll notice, the sticks aren't in here right now. So the sticks are actually, let's get that on screen. Sticks are actually nicely tucked away in here, and you can just screw them in. I did get an extra set of those as well. I do like that. So the Mavic 1 just has the sticks fixed in there. You can't pull them out. One of the other things that I have noticed, I've gotten 2 years of use out of this. I've got hundreds and hundreds of hours of flight with this. The battery is only charging to like 97% now. So I've noticed that it never gets that full perfect charge. I'm not surprised this is something that happens. In ensuring the hull is worth the dollars, absolutely, Corey. The folks that I've got actually have discounted my price for all the safe flights that I've been doing. So that's been great. I like seeing their little bills and seeing that they've gone down a little bit here and there. But yeah, all of my hulls are insured, and then we also do the liability. It's a must-have. I mean, I'm flying around, this for Clark Whalen. I'm flying around a very expensive project, so I want to make sure I'm covered if we do anything wrong. Samuel, 5 years with Mavic 2 Pro will still be the best. Samuel, I have been loving this thing, and it's done a great job for me. And we're about to get into the one thing that I've not been satisfied about. But so, big concern was the this battery here. So far, it hasn't dipped down anymore, but I'll be keeping track of that. But it's met my expectations, and in 2 years of use, to have the battery just a little lower than its optimal charge. I'm not going to complain about that. I understand how lithium-ion batteries work, and I'm pretty satisfied with it. We'll see how long it goes. Now, the one thing, so aperture priority and aperture control, huge to me. And the one thing that did not go over well with me came up last year. And let's see, CJ, how much coverage do you carry? I did it for 1 million for liability, and then full coverage for the drones. And let's see here. I always get the names wrong, so I'm just gonna pop this up, and go figure. I'll move that around. So there we go. I signed up with Skywatch. Once again, I don't work for them. They do renew me every month. I get a notification and email. They pop up on my phone here so I can make sure that I'm okie dokie. And so I use them for all the flights. It's kind of like when I'm checking on Lance as well. So I check Kitty Hawk. Air Maps also available. Before every flight, I go double check. Am I still insured? Did the payment, did the payment clear? Let's see. So 5 years, Mavic 2 Pro. Yeah, sure. All right, just checking out the chat, making sure I'm not missing anything from you guys. But so the one big problem that I had and was pretty darned upset about were the initial batteries that came with the Mavic 2 Pro. I've got a whole other video about this. I've had a lot of people comment on it, so thanks for popping by. I'm sorry that this garbage is happening to you too. In total, last November, so a year ago, so having owned the drone for a little over a year, I had to retire multiple batteries. I actually noticed it before November. It was basically close to the year anniversary of my purchase of the Mavic 2 Pro. In total, I've had 6 batteries. 6. So this is an update from the last video. But in total, I have had 6 batteries start swelling, swelling after a flight, swelling, being charged, so I had to retire them. Now those batteries are what, 129, 6 batteries, that's closing into $1,000, right? So that was ridiculous. The first set of them came with a Fly More. So I did the Fly More combo to get some batteries when I purchased the Mavic 2 Pro. So these all seem to be in the same batch, but all of the ones that came with that combo went bad. And I took a look at my flights with air data. So let me click on air data here. There we go, my logs. So, oh, you can actually see some of my flights from this weekend. So everything I do, I synchronize and I keep track of, and I also keep track of all the information on my batteries and on my drone and number of flights. So going and looking at what happened to me, those batteries were charged less than 45 times. I think the maximum number of flights on one of the batteries was 42. I had a couple that were in the 30s, so that was really disturbing to me that the batteries went bad so quickly. And DJI, apparently, when I got in touch with them, they've got a 6-month warranty on the batteries. So that was a huge disappointment. So I had to lay out a fair amount of cash. So I already spent this money on these batteries, and they all went to garbage. Most of them in under a year, a year max. So the new sets of batteries, I've got 6 for this. And I did do the proper disposal of those batteries, so they didn't just get chucked. But because I was so bothered with it, I always label things, but let's just pop this up here. So I've got labels on every one of my drone batteries now. When they were purchased, the actual purchase date, just to keep up with that. And I thought I had everything on Do Not Disturb. My apologies for that. Somebody ringing in. But so I'm tracking all of these because it was not okay to have those batteries go bad so quick. So another November 2019, which goes with the other one. And then I've got the other one in the case, and the other one's in the other Pelican case. So let me look over. Batteries can be changed every now and then when needed. I don't really have a problem with the batteries. It's just the prices. Yeah. It's okay if you're working with it a lot, not just a hobby. Yeah, totally. Oh, and thanks, Samuel. It's happened to a lot of other people. If you look on my YouTube channel and just DJI battery, you'll find it. I've gotten a ton of comments on it. And people are still having this issue happen to them. So I've had more people get in touch who have newer batteries that are swelling and having problems in under a year. And I don't think that that's acceptable at those prices. So active flights, let's see, DJI Mavic 2 Pro battery. Let's find a price, shall we? Okay, $149 from the initial DJI store. And in my case, let's just see here, $149. I know that we can get it somewhere else for a little cheaper, but $149 times 6 is $894 spent on the on the replacement batteries. Plus, I had purchased them already too. So other than the one that came with the drone, it's a pretty hefty hit. I could have purchased a nice little laptop for that, or, you know, come a long way toward buying another drone if I wanted to. So disappointing is an understatement, but that is my biggest gripe with the Mavic 2 Pro. Its flight has been fantastic and consistent. I have had a couple of moments where I needed to, recalibrate the gimbal. We always do the compass calibration regularly, firmware updates and things. But overall, this has been a fantastic working drone for this tiny little thing. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. You know, we're all familiar with the size and shape of the Mavic 2. But to have the kind of images coming out of this thing and the kind of video coming out of this thing, and the biggest test, the biggest proof is the reaction of my clients to the jobs that I've been doing for them. So, by the way, just one more extra battery recently. It says on it, I don't know if it's going to get it in focus or not, but this was a February 2020 purchase. I got this one extra one because of a new job. So I knew how much I need when I'm in the field for the number of batteries for my jobs. So that's why I buy extras. But so beyond that, I think the Mavic 2 Pro has been an incredibly worthwhile expenditure for my particular drone business. Now down the road, if we were to get into higher end 3D modeling where people were requesting that, I'd probably be thinking about an RTK setup and the Phantom line. Now that I'm not full-time in the Airstream anymore, I've got some room to spread out, so I don't mind carrying around a larger case. But getting onto a job site with something in a case this size is just fantastic. Because normally when I'm going in to do work, I'm probably carrying another camera, maybe a gimbal, maybe the 7D or the 5D. So having a tiny little case with a super powerful drone in it that can actually produce quality results that clients are satisfied with. Let me tell you, we did a private property flight just a couple of weeks ago for a nice gentleman who's out of Phoenix. His whole family has lived in Arizona forever, so he's actually an Arizona native. So we were joking around about that when we met up. And so we were chatting, and they're going to be moving up to Prescott in the near future out of the heat down south. But I got all their shots done. We did a nice little model for them, and I dropped him a note and sent him the web-based presentation that we do on our deliverables now. And he dropped me a note back. $894 can buy the Mavic Air. Exactly, Samuel. So I don't know if you prefer Sam or Samuel, but exactly. So all that battery waste, I could have had one of those in my kit of drones. So anyways, George said to me, I sent him the deliverable, I sent him the model and some images from the property. And his response to me was what we just did for him was way beyond his expectations. And what we did for him is what's our standard practice now. When we go out to raw land sites, I've got kind of a routine. So 360 pano at 30 and usually at 50. So 30 feet above ground, 50 feet above ground, to give them some ideas when they're looking at the property where they want to build. We fly a grid pattern with Ground Station Pro to take a look at the ortho. We take some still shots from the cardinal directions, and then I package it all up into that delivery page that we do. And so he let me know. He said it was well beyond his expectations, and that we really wowed him. So I was thrilled to pieces. That job was done with the Mavic 2 Pro. Also, I did have the Mavic Pro out there with me because once again, my big gripe on that aperture, if we were flying for just still images and you're doing big grand things in landscapes, the Mavic Pro is fine. Don't scrap that thing. Use it. Make use of it. It's just for the higher end client jobs. I'm going to be, bringing the better sensor, the better megapixels, that aperture control. And so there we go. So I have done a couple of propeller swaps over the years on this. I don't find the props too expensive. So like I said, the big gripe was the whole battery situation, which is still ongoing. And I think that DJI really needs to do a little more in their quality control. Beyond that, this is a fantastic flying camera. I do have ND filters for it as well because we do live in Arizona, and when it's bright and hyper blue here, it's really bright and hyper blue here. So now, we've got that aperture control plus neutral density filters. You can really get your focus where you want and, get the type of still images you want. But if I was out doing a still image job for one of my clients, and let's say the Mavic 2 Pro was not available or I already went through the batteries, I would happily use the original Mavic Pro to do the stills. So the one thing that I kind of stay away from the original Mavic, is on video, because I'm not playing around with swapping out multiple ND filters while I'm on a location. That gets painful and additionally time consuming. So that's when I'm looking at the Mavic 2. So there you go. 2 years of Mavic 2 ownership. I am a happy customer, except for the batteries. And I am not a DJI fanboy, I promise you. Look, if someone comes to market with another drone that can help me do all of the services that I do in my business, I'm going to take a very serious look at that. And with some of what I saw a couple weeks ago, with some of the new applications for Skydio, they've got my attention. So batteries can be changed. Yeah. Do you change frames per seconds for the video? Yeah. So when I'm doing a location, when I'm shooting, so for the clients that I have, like the Clark Whalen project there, I'm not messing around too much. I'm not making something cinematic for them. This is to show them the progress of their build site. So when we're doing that one, I'm usually at 30, so I'm doing 30 FPS, so that means 1/60th of a second on my shutter speed. And so I do that as shutter priority. So I'm not manipulating the exposure while I'm flying those sites. Now, when I do fun things out in the Granite Dells or pretty locations or cinematic things, I am breaking things into more clips, and I am adjusting my exposure as we're doing the flights. So when I do these types of construction projects, there's a lot of automation there. I had someone say in one of my classes that they were disappointed to see that I was using some automatic exposure and things. I understand what they're saying. When it comes to doing still photography and more artistic things, I am totally into manual, totally into shutter priority or aperture priority, depending on what I'm trying to achieve. So there's a lot more changes, CJ, when I'm flying for different purposes. When I'm doing things for ortho mosaics and these construction jobs, I'm leaning more towards some additional automation. When I'm doing more cinematic fun stuff, or things that I really want to show off, beautiful locations, then there's a lot of times when I'm switching to full manual. So also the one other thing, so I do have one other item to note. Doing the 60 FPS on the Mavic 2 Pro, I have noticed some issues with a little bit of jiggling and stuttering as I'm moving around property. So when I start curving, whether it's Litchi or Ground Station Pro or doing it manually in the DJI Go 4 app, I've noticed a little jitter. So that's at 60 FPS, and for the shutter speed, 1/120th of a second. And when I ratchet myself back down to 30 frames a second, I don't get that kind of jitter. So I don't know if it's maybe the right speed to my memory card. It shouldn't be, because that memory card is about as high end as we can go. But I've wondered, and actually I still have to do a couple more tests with that. So that just gives me a reminder of what I would like to do this week while we still have the smoke cloud above us. And I'll let you know about that. I'll put something up. I'm going to make a note for myself to follow up. But yeah, when I was doing the 60 FPS, I was noticing some troubles. I noticed it on a Skull Valley property. I also noticed it on a Williamson property as well, that when I was doing an orbit and I was at the 60 frames per second with 1/120th, we just have this it got cleaned up in Final Cut Pro, so the final product was okay, but it was still concerning to me, and there was a sizable difference looking at the quality of that video. All right, everybody. So, like I said, not being a DJI fanboy, if someone else has the tools that I need, I'm going to be very interested. So I'm going to keep a watch out on the new Skydio stuff. In the meantime, I'm going to keep using this Mavic 2, and if I ever were to have a need to replace it right now, I think I'd probably end up with a Phantom 4 Pro, just because of the shutter on that, the mechanical shutter, since I'm not living in a small space. But as far as quality and results, I have not had any clients say this is terrible and the focus is awful or anything like that. We've always gotten great and positive responses. And a lot of times we'll meet the clients, I'll pull this drone out and they're like, you're kidding me, right? So they're expecting something like an Inspire or, even the Phantom, but seeing this smaller drone and then finding out that it can do that job, it wows a lot of customers. So I've gotten a lot of interesting responses from them. All right, everyone, I don't want to keep rambling on you here, so I'm going to say that we're going to wrap this one up today. Like I said, sad to finish that project off. That project was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed working with those clients. By the way, if you get in with a good construction group, you're going to enjoy your drone job a lot more. So when you get in with these types of groups, if you're producing great product for them, they're not afraid to open their checkbooks to you. Where when you're doing smaller clients, oftentimes they're very price sensitive. But when you get in with larger build outs and larger projects, your charges are usually a drop in the bucket. And if you can save management time from having to drive up to a project location, you're probably, your one flight in a day saved people a lot of money. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about pitching your projects. And let me look on over. Samuel, thanks for the insight. I appreciate the content. Hope to try to do Skydio soon. Yeah, exactly. The Mavic 2 Pro is working just great for me as well. Some of those applications that I'm seeing coming out from Skydio are starting to touch on the things that I need. And the one other thing to note, because I've had people getting in touch with the latest DJI, the Air, the Air 2. Good flying, stay safe. You too, CJ. The latest DJI drone, all the app developers are not up to date for that one yet. So one of the other big things, one of the big warnings when you're buying the newest and buying the latest, make sure that if your favorite app, Litchi, Ground Station, Map Pilot, Drone Harmony, whatever it is, make sure that app can fly that new drone. I've heard from many people over the past few weeks asking me, going, oh no, Litchi doesn't have my drone yet, and Ground Station doesn't have my drone, whichever one it is. And that's true, and that does happen. And the software development kit goes out, the third-party application creators get to work on it, but sometimes there's a sizable delay. So if you're looking at getting on the ground right now and doing the job, really read through the specs on the newest, latest, and greatest. It might be the case that using an older drone, you're better off than that brand new first drone. Let's take a look. Just joined up, Rich. I have been using the P4P for progression stuff. Found the gimbal tends to drift. Oh, okay. And not giving you consistent results. Very excited to keep an eye on the Skydio. Yeah, I'm really looking at that, Matt. You're gonna, I'm watching for new announcements beyond those videos that they made the other week. And the moment that I start seeing people producing things about construction, I'm going to really be seriously looking at it. So really weird on that on your gimbal drift though. You know, I've had that here and there, not usually during the same flight, but you know, when you're repeating the flights, when you come out a month later, yeah, it seems like it's off by 1 or 2 degrees. And it's been consistent when we think about, you know, the GPS information we have and how accurate it is. Combine that with windy days, there's a couple of good excuses. But it's easy enough to line all these things up in Photoshop afterward. Oh, I was also asked by somebody about Affinity Photo. So I've been playing around with that photo editor, Affinity, and you can do a lot with it. So I'm still toying around with it, but yes, you can line up image layers for time lapse with it. So I've already checked that out, and I'll be doing a whole separate video on that. All right, everybody, I hope you have an awesome start to the week. I need to get some other work done this morning, finish off my uploads for Clark Wayland and their final flight. I'm supposed to be flying in Williams, Arizona tomorrow. I am going to call the client and say to them, no, we're not going to be hitting the road for a while because of all the smoke from California. So that was the one result that I was disappointed with in this past weekend, was all of that smoke haze. Doesn't do the area justice, but we've been having it for well over a week now. And then not too long before that, we had the haboob with all the dust in the air. So it's been difficult getting some good flights in lately. All right. Yeah, great price on Affinity, CJ. Absolutely. So for people who are wanting to align layers and not spend on Photoshop, this is a way to go. It's 40. When I looked at it, it was $49. Once again, I don't work for them either. By the way, if you do want to help and support this channel, be sure to like and subscribe. Down in the show description, we do have links to all of the drone classes that I do, and those classes are over on Udemy. And just to let you know, in the near future, I'm going to be switching platforms. I've got a new class at the ready, and we haven't even talked about that yet. But I'm going to be migrating from Udemy, where some of my classes will be staying, over to Teachable, and I'll tell you about that in another video because we're just about an hour on this video. So I always manage to overrun. Sorry about that. And thanks for hanging with me, everybody. All right, have a great start to the week. If you're interested in Affinity Photo, they do have a free trial. I'd suggest trying it out and doing some of that image alignment if that's what you're needing. All right, we'll see you again in the near future, everyone. Have a great start to the week.